Hey guys, today I'll show you a science fiction thriller TV series named Lost in Space, Season 2. Spoilers ahead, watch out and take care. The drama picks up where the mothership was suddenly sucked into a black hole, instantly plunging it into chaos. At that moment, the radar detected a mysterious object approaching. It turned out to be two robots entangled in a space duel, neither gaining the upper hand. Finally, both fell into the ship. John and his family's spacecraft had been drawn into the black hole and were forced to land on this planet 7 months ago. Here, they not only grew crops but also constructed a greenhouse using the Jupiter module, isolating themselves from the outside world. On this planet, the air is composed of methane. Anyone stepping outside the Jupiter module must wear a spacesuit and helmet. John and his son Will visited the seaside, where they found a miraculous alien plant. It's the glowing seaweed. John carefully collected the seaweed into a bottle. Over the past 7 months, Maureen hadn't been idle either. With the spacecraft's fuel depleted, she had been working on the engine of an alien spaceship, but despite the time spent, there had been no response. They used the glowing seaweed to fashion a Christmas tree. Astronaut Don came in holding his last dinner, and everyone received different gifts. Will received every little boy's dream gift, a set of car keys, and he could finally learn to drive. Then, Will brought out the gifts he had prepared for everyone. Amazingly, a book written by his sister Penny that chronicled all their adventures in space travel. Of course, there was an indispensable person on the spacecraft. It's the cunning June. Maureen knew she was dangerous, so she kept her locked in a room. Just then, an alarm sounded. Due to the monsoon climate, the plastic sheeting of their greenhouse had developed holes. It was clear from the patches that this wasn't the first time they had repaired it. Soon, Will embarked on his first driving lesson. Unexpectedly, driving proved slower than walking. The spacecraft was out of energy, and even the electricity supply was cut off. The only source of power was the solar panels, which barely supported the spacesuits and oxygen supply system. After extensive research, Maureen determined that thunderstorms appeared on the horizon every 23 days, accurate to the minute, almost as if it was orchestrated. Thus, she planned to move the spacecraft into the storm area to charge it with lightning and then leave the planet. An alarm suddenly awoke the two who were sleeping. They went to check and discovered a large tear in the plastic sheeting of the greenhouse. Without a second thought, John opened the door and rushed out without wearing a spacesuit. His reckless decision to repair the tear unprotected left his hands frostbitten, and the continuous influx of methane gas through the hole nearly cost him his life due to excessive inhalation. Fortunately, Don, who was properly suited up, arrived in time to rescue John. However, the crops were destroyed in the incident. With no other choice, they decided to start Maureen's plan ahead of schedule. They painted the plastic sheeting with dye to make it into a sail and used the rover to construct the necessary support for the sail. They became the first humans to turn a spacecraft into a sailboat. Inside the spacecraft, they planned their navigation route using a map. Once everyone was buckled up and the support structure was retracted, they successfully launched into the water. The Jupiter module then set sail across the sea, turning the spacecraft into a functioning sailboat, something they had never anticipated. As they continued to sail, Maureen calculated that the atmospheric pressure was dropping, a monsoon was forming behind them, and a massive storm was imminent. Inside the spacecraft, June, casually snacking, suddenly noticed something. She yelled for Penny to quickly inform John that they needed to roll up the sails and stop the boat. Before she could finish, they crashed into a reef, and the Jupiter was stuck. Fortunately, the hull was undamaged. In the room, June told Maureen that she was a skilled sailor, but due to her many lies, Maureen didn't believe her. Will, sitting at the table, was captivated by something in the sea. They leaned in closer, initially thinking it might be alien robots coming to rescue them. Will was disappointed to find that they were just glowing seaweed. Finally, Maureen thought of a solution. They used the spacecraft's extendable module to successfully push off the reef, freeing themselves from being stuck. However, a new challenge lay ahead. The storm had already begun, and larger reefs loomed ahead. Misfortune never comes alone. Towering reefs were nearby. They hurriedly retracted the sails from the top of the spacecraft, but at that moment, the mast unexpectedly flung Will away. Fortunately, his father, with quick reflexes, grabbed a rope attached to Will at the last second. However, his spacesuit was torn, and methane gas from the planet began seeping in. They rushed John to the medical bay. With no sailing experience, Maureen had no choice but to release June from confinement. They climbed to the top of the cabin with the reefs alarmingly close. June ordered the sails to be unfurled and then sped up to navigate past the reefs ahead. Just then, a huge wave struck, knocking Maureen down and trapping her stinky foot in a net. June approached with a knife, startling Maureen, but thankfully, she was just cutting the ropes to free Maureen. Through relentless effort, they finally managed to open the sails. But another problem arose. A reef on the right blocked their path. They needed to shift the center of gravity of the spacecraft to tilt it and pass over the reef. The combined weight of the 4 heavy women was clearly insufficient. At that moment, John came up with a solution. The rover weighed 2 tons, and they could use its weight to create the necessary shift. However, by then, he had lost the ability to move and had to entrust this task to Will. Will climbed into the vehicle, first reversing, then shifting gears. With a sharp turn, he crashed straight into the wall. The airbags deployed with a burst. As the vehicle collided, the spacecraft began to tilt, but they successfully navigated past the rocks. Surprisingly, June proved to be a skilled navigator. This time, she wasn't lying. Due to her contribution to their success, they decided to accept her into the group. However, during a suit change, Maureen noticed frostbite on her hands. At that moment, June admitted that she was responsible for the holes in the greenhouse. Her actions were intended to make them leave this dreadful planet. Maureen chose not to share this revelation with everyone because, in reality, the situation was mutually beneficial. Just as they thought they could easily reach their destination, the spacecraft suddenly slowed down, revealing a massive waterfall ahead. Everyone buckled up as John maneuvered the ship, fortunately getting stuck atop the waterfall. They went to check the situation from the top of the ship and discovered a smooth, metallic surface below, likely man-made. They couldn't help but wonder who could have built such a monumental structure. This spacecraft-turned-sailboat was stuck on the waterfall with only an hour and a half until a thunderstorm. Maureen prepared to harness electricity using a kite. By connecting the kite's tether to the ship, they'd be able to recharge it and have enough energy to leave the planet. Below, Don cleaned the ship in preparation for takeoff. While looking for tools to clear seaweed, he experienced sudden severe pain in his leg. Unbeknownst to him, toxic seaweed had attached to his leg, paralyzing his nerves. He fell, dragging Penny down into the water with him. Hearing their cries, Maureen quickly went to rescue her daughter. Meanwhile, the kite was blown away by the wind. John, quick on his feet, managed to catch the kite string and secure it to a pole just in time. As Don and Penny were climbing out, a bunch of seaweed rushed toward Penny. She dodged backward but was swept away by the water flow. Maureen, seeing the situation, jumped into the water to save her daughter. Despite the rapid current, their sturdy spacesuits helped them emerge safely from the waterfall. After checking for any damages to their suits, the mysterious metallic area caught Maureen's attention. The approaching thunderstorm was undoubtedly attracted by the large metal pole in the center, acting as a conductor. Maureen hurriedly recorded the eerie inscriptions on the ground with her camera. Dawn was dragged back to the medical room by Judy and Will for treatment, evidencing the strong toxicity of the seaweed. With only an hour left before the thunderstorm, Maureen thought of a way to lower the kite. They could climb up using the kite's tether. John immediately climbed the pole to retrieve the kite, but they had already loosened the screws to dismantle it. Just as he was about to grab the kite, the pole began to shake. John fell, and the pole came crashing down. Fortunately, it missed them, but the kite used to harness the lightning was lost. Now, they needed a way to survive this dire situation. The two trapped under a huge waterfall faced desperation. Climbing up was not an option for the time being. With an hour until the thunderstorm, Will in the cabin came up with an idea. They could build a Faraday cage, effectively a sealed metal cage that eliminates electrical potential differences across the human body. Inside the cage, since no current passes through, there would be no sensation of electric shock. They could use the vehicle as a Faraday cage, allowing Maureen and Penny to board it and avoid the lightning strike. The vehicle's tether, made of conductive metal, could serve as a substitute for the kite to guide the electricity. However, a major problem arose. The vehicle was in the spacecraft's garage, now submerged underwater. Upon hearing this, Maureen jokingly said, "Good thing she married a Navy SEAL." Her husband John rolled his eyes and headed straight for the garage. John secured the ropes, closed the vehicle's door, and connected the diversion wire to the motor. Meanwhile, Will was distracted by a faint noise that seemed to come from an alien spacecraft's engine. Before he could investigate, his father called him away. When John tried to open the garage door, it wouldn't budge, blocked by seaweed. He then fetched Judy and tools to clear the seaweed from the door. Soon, the seaweed was almost completely cleared. John let the children go up first while he finished clearing the remaining seaweed. As John was clearing the area, water began to flood in. Judy wanted to help her father, but he was already on his way. They quickly climbed up, and fortunately, Will closed it in time to prevent the water from rushing in. The vehicle slid down along the stream. Maureen was instructing John on what to do if a thunderstorm hit while simultaneously praying for the vehicle to drop quickly. Unexpectedly, due to the limited length of the hoist rope, the vehicle was left hanging in midair. As the thunder roared, a thunderstorm was imminent. At that moment, Penny came up with a solution. They tied the recently fallen pillars into a makeshift ladder. As the ladder was raised, they secured the other end with rocks. They quickly entered the vehicle, but by then the thunderstorm had already struck. At the last moment, they boarded the vehicle, which was then engulfed by the lightning. As it spread, both the vehicle and the spacecraft were at risk of being submerged. Inside the vehicle, Maureen held a crying Penny tightly. With a flash of white light, the spacecraft was successfully charged. The energy from the lightning was formidable. The engine ignited. With some turbulence, the spacecraft took off, but not without a tail trailing in the sky. As they retracted the tail with the vehicle attached, everyone hurriedly unbuckled and rushed to the garage. John picked up a crowbar and began pounding on the charred vehicle. He then moved to the other side and slowly pried open the vehicle door. Inside, Maureen and Penny had their eyes closed. They had miraculously survived without a scratch. While everyone was celebrating, the sound of the alien engine in the corner caught Will's attention. He crawled over to investigate, and suddenly, a claw appeared. Will dodged, and the mechanical claw fell to the ground. It was a severed limb from a previous fight with the alien robot. John then packed the limb into a box. Following Maureen's advice, everyone moved to the upper deck of the ship. Maureen stepped forward to check the instruments previously used for studying the alien engine and noticed fluctuations. As the spacecraft moved through space, the radar issued an alert. They approached to see what it was and noticed a massive object. Maureen quickly checked the signal source, which turned out to be an audio signature. Every ship has an audio watermark for identification in the air. This audio was from their mothership, the Resolute. Hearing this news brought immense joy to everyone. After enduring so much, they could finally rejoin the main fleet and board the mothership again. With that, they hurriedly started preparing for the journey. Meanwhile, June, having heard the news, quietly exited and went to her room. She retrieved a piece of toxic seaweed from the trash bin where it had been discarded earlier and placed it inside a book. It seems that she was planning something new. After overcoming many challenges, this family's spacecraft finally approached the mothership. They entered the interior of the mothership and began to signal it, but received no response. With the press of a button, the spacecraft successfully docked with the mothership. They were all eagerly anticipating rejoining the main fleet, including Don, who was still injured and on an IV drip, and his pet chicken. However, due to Don's unimproved condition, he had to stay behind on the spacecraft, clinging to his pet. Meanwhile, Maureen made sure to handcuff June to the spacecraft. After a round of disinfecting with white smoke, they successfully boarded the mothership. However, the vast mothership seemed deserted, not a soul in sight. Thinking it might be lunchtime, they headed to the cafeteria, only to find scattered dishes and moldy food. John asked the children to return to the spacecraft, suspecting that something might have happened on the mothership, causing the main fleet to relocate. Maureen sought to uncover the reason and soon found the broadcast records, but all they heard was a garbled, chaotic noise recorded 7 months ago, the time they were sucked into the black hole. Unbeknownst to them, June had already freed herself from the handcuffs and had sneaked onto the mothership. She first used a chip on her hand to open the stairwell, but since she was in a detained status, she didn't have the authority to open the stairs. She went to her room, packed everything that could prove her identity, then set fire to everything in the corridor. The mothership detected the fire, and the fire doors on that deck closed. The stairwell, now accessible due to the fire, didn't require any permissions to open. As a result, the lowered gates separated John and his family, who had to find another way to regroup. Meanwhile, June went to the data room to alter the records and even took a moment to tidy her hair and take a selfie. While Judy was looking for a way out, she surprisingly encountered a little girl. The girl told her that the mothership had been attacked by a monster, causing everyone to scatter and flee, and she had been living alone on the mothership for 7 months after being separated from her mother. At this time, Don was attracted by a noise inside the spacecraft. Driven by curiosity, he opened a large box. Inside was an alien mechanical arm. He quickly locked the box and informed the others on the mothership. John assured him that it was just a part of a broken robot that he had forgotten to mention. Afterward, Don mentioned the moving wires on the mechanical arm, and Will, recalling his first encounter with the alien robot in a tree, realized it was trying to reassemble itself, suggesting that the alien robot might still be present. The group was quite alarmed and decided to meet in the cafeteria. The little girl took Judy on a shortcut, while Maureen asked Don to go to the cockpit to use the telescope to monitor the situation and keep them informed. Maureen also learned from Don that June had already made her way onto the mothership. The little girl led Judy through the pipes as a shortcut to the cafeteria, but her backpack got snagged and torn. Out fell items that were very precious to her, including a photo of her father. Through their conversation, Judy learned that the girl's father had mysteriously disappeared aboard the mothership. Just then, a strange noise started up, and when they looked, they saw a robot glowing with red light. Meanwhile, Will was already waiting in the cafeteria when they heard some noises approaching. They quickly hid behind a table. Upon hearing the news, John hurried towards the cafeteria. Will and his companion cautiously got up to see what was there, and to their surprise, they found a horse in front of them, which seemed to have come to the cafeteria to eat. On Judy's side, the alien robot had already started moving towards the cafeteria from underneath them. June went to the medical room, found the person whose identity she had previously faked, and took out the identification chip from her arm. She then headed to the control room, deleted the videos of her being interrogated and the accidental killing of a man. With these actions, it seemed her disguised identity would remain unknown. In the cockpit, Don saw the red light and it was moving towards the cafeteria. The horse in the cafeteria got spooked and kept neighing. Penny, using her experience from her grandmother's horse farm, managed to calm the horse down. However, the clatter of falling dishes from the table attracted the alien robot. Will and his companion quickly hid behind the table again to observe. They saw a damaged alien robot wriggling on the ground, resembling a scarecrow. They didn't know how many scarecrows were there. Don wanted to shout to attract attention, but he was too far to be heard. Step by step, the scarecrow approached Will and the others. Then, a song started playing. It was John mocking the alien robot with his singing. The scarecrow, obviously annoyed, turned and crawled towards John and the others. Seeing the scarecrow leave, Don in the cockpit quickly warned John and the others to run. John, halfway through his song, admitted he couldn't remember the rest of the lyrics, but Maureen stopped his bullshit and told him to just run. Despite being damaged, the robot was surprisingly fast. They quickly ran into a room to hide. The scarecrow followed the sound, crawled into the room, and found only a communicator. John and the others immediately shut the room's door, locking it inside. They could finally breathe a sigh of relief. John jokingly said to Maureen that she had never liked his singing, but this time it really came in handy. June was in the corridor while Judy and the little girl jumped down from the passage above. When Judy took a closer look at the girl's photo, it stirred up her memories. The man she had inadvertently caused the death of was the girl's father, a haunting shadow she couldn't shake off. Eventually, everyone gathered in the main hall. At that moment, Maureen spotted a spacecraft returning to the mothership, and everyone's faces were filled with joy. They hurried towards the spacecraft's hatch, but when it opened, they were greeted not by friends, but by fully armed soldiers. Following them was the mothership's deputy commander. It turned out their escape from the mothership had been prompted by an attack from scarecrows. At this, Maureen questioned how the commander knew they were on the mothership, to which the commander replied the moment they boarded, he received a signal. John informed the commander that they had trapped a scarecrow in a room. The commander corrected him that he didn't trap it, but let it return. It turned out that Will was not the first to establish a connection with alien intelligence, and all the secrets were hidden behind this wall. As the lights turned on, a large circular portal appeared before them. It revealed that the mothership's cockpit was actually built using the cockpit of an alien spaceship. The reason humans could now travel through space was all thanks to a previously crashed alien spaceship. They had used this alien ship to build the current mothership and even imprisoned an alien robot. They discovered that the alien robot, which was afraid of a certain radio frequency, could be controlled and used to help humans operate the mothership. The commander said the robot is like a key, and without the key, humans can't even start the alien engine. Maureen saw that the engine on the mothership was now missing, which turns out to have been taken by the robot Will knew. Maureen informed them that there was another alien engine on their ship. If they had this engine, the mothership might continue its voyage. Their ship was then taken over, and the family had to move their personal belongings out. Due to her 7 months of research on the alien engine, Maureen was left on the mothership to continue assisting with the work. Ironically, the mothership was now short of water, and John had been sent to a similarly arid desert planet to drill for water. Meanwhile, Judy arrived at the medical team's camp, feeling that having treated many critically ill patients on a strange planet, she could act as a doctor, but she ended up being a nurse doing odd jobs. Don also returned to his station. One moment he was strutting, the next he received a hefty punch, a greeting method in their department. He was then assigned to repair the broken vehicle in front of him. Everything seemed to be slowly getting back on track, but danger seemed to be gradually approaching. John boarded the vehicle to head to the drilling platform, accompanied by Judy. Upon arriving at the drilling platform, John received bad news. The water well had been successfully drilled the previous day, and the water was flowing continuously, but today the pipes were blocked. Someone needed to go down to inspect, and John agreed at the behest of the leader. The first 2 sections of the descent revealed no problems, so he decided to continue down. Unbeknownst to him, something was clinging to the pipes. Judy retrieved the lost ring for the little girl from the pond, but the ring had become extremely fragile and crumbled at the slightest touch. Meanwhile, John, down in the well, tried to turn a valve and unexpectedly broke off a piece, leaving him utterly bewildered. Judy, realizing something was amiss, quickly instructed everyone on the well platform to evacuate. As debris continued to fall from above, John acted swiftly, pulling his teammate's safety latch to send him up before attempting to secure his own escape. However, his metal carabiner snapped, revealing the corrosive properties of the water on this planet, which also began to erode the structure of the tower built above, causing it to slowly collapse. Attempting to climb up the wall supports, John found his route blocked as the tower structure suddenly gave way, crashing down and critically injuring a man who now urgently needed to be transported back to base for rescue. John, still in the well, remained relatively safe for the moment. Upon contacting her father, Judy learned that a tanker truck carrying water from the well was en route to the base. She urgently needed to stop it to prevent a disaster. Rushing to get on board a rescue vehicle, Judy quickly reached out to Don. Just as Don was about to launch the spaceship, having just dropped his freshly prepared lunch in haste, he ran towards the spacecraft and managed to stop it in the nick of time, saving the mothership. Back on the spaceship, June packed up her bag, took a book from Penny, and was about to leave when she saw police officers waiting at the door. They announced her arrest and took her to the interrogation room. She told the officer that she wasn't a bad person, explaining how she had saved Will and his family on a strange planet, piloting through a methane-filled storm at sea, as documented in Penny's book. However, when the officer touched the seaweed in the book and tried to retrieve the video from the day all humans boarded the mothership, he found that the videos, including those of June, had vanished. Soon after, the officer's hand began to numb and he collapsed. Meanwhile, Will visited the room holding the Scarecrow, attempting to awaken the combat robot. As he became engrossed in trying to establish a connection with the robot, the mothership's deputy commander appeared behind Will. While claiming to want to communicate with the robot, he actually used a sonic vibration device to restrain the robot. Will said it was like trying to communicate by hitting someone with a stick. The robots were named Scarecrows because when the alien spaceship first crashed, their exposed wires resembled straw. Just then, Will noticed the dimming light on the Scarecrow's face, indicating its confusion. He tried to connect with the Scarecrow just as the commander turned off the sonic device, allowing the Scarecrow to slowly emerge. Will retrieved a robotic arm from the box and reattached it to the Scarecrow, successfully establishing a connection. The Scarecrow then lifted Will's shirt to inspect an old scar it had left on him. As Will handed over a model from his bag, suggesting they could be friends, the Scarecrow glanced at the model. Just as Will's face filled with hope, the Scarecrow suddenly became enraged and crushed the model. Fortunately, the commander activated the device in time, saving Will from potential disaster. Just as Will left, Maureen arrived and gave the commander a severe scolding. Returning to his room, the commander felt profoundly dejected. Removing his shirt, it was clear that the scars on his body were evidence of his absolute dedication to establishing a connection with the Scarecrow. While talking with Will, Maureen suddenly realized she had fallen into a misconception. The alien robots might not be the only key to the alien spaceships. Will could be the second key, finding another way. She then took Will to the cockpit of the mothership. Initially stunned by the view, Will walked over to the box where the Scarecrow was kept. He told the Scarecrow that they might not be able to be friends, but it didn't deserve to be locked up. The Scarecrow then pointed in a direction, and following its guidance, Will saw a handprint. He placed his hand on it and instantly saw a scene of a nearby planet being mined for water resources, and the alien robot once he had made friends with was now on that barren planet. Meanwhile, above a water well, the support structure of the platform collapsed, trapping John in the well. Unbeknownst to him, the metal under his feet was corroding, and he suddenly fell through. Misfortune followed as a steel rod pierced his abdomen. He quickly tore off his shirt to bind around the wound and managed to contact Judy, informing her of his situation. Panicked, Judy immediately turned back to the medical room to gather all the necessary first aid supplies while inquiring about her father's condition. She then planned to drive the vehicle to rescue him, but the squad leader stopped her, saying that if she took the vehicle, it might break down before reaching him, leaving her stranded in the wilderness, and then he'd have to rescue both of them. After some persuasion, the squad leader finally agreed, and Judy set off in the vehicle. However, it wasn't long before the vehicle encountered problems. The right front wheel's strut fell off, causing the vehicle to shake and eventually crash into the roadside. Judy got out to inspect it and discovered severe corrosion. It was impossible to continue driving. According to the navigator, she was still 20 miles from her destination. She decided to use her excellent running skills to head out and save her father. After preparing and reassuring her father, she set off running. During the run, through conversations with her father, she realized his condition was dire. She then stopped, chose a shortcut via the navigator, but this meant leaving the safety of the barriers. Beyond the barriers, the dangers were unknown. She dashed into the valley, but just then, several alien dinosaurs appeared. Her agile movements were all she had to continuously dodge the dinosaurs' attacks. To evade them further, she squeezed into a crevice in the valley. Her backpack nearly got caught by one of the dinosaurs. Terrified, she closed her eyes and leaned against the rock wall. Judy glanced at the terrain ahead and burst forth, making use of her small size to dodge by leaping around. Finally, she succeeded. As she kept running, memories of her previous times with her father flashed through her mind. She managed to reach the water well where her father was trapped just before nightfall. Descending through the piping, she delivered an adrenaline shot to her father. After persistent efforts from everyone, they finally rescued him. Life is full of bumps and setbacks, but family love can overcome them all. Don and his companion were studying chemical reactions, but this study led to an astonishing discovery. The substance corroding the metal could spread through contact. They immediately halted the use of all metal-rich items in the base, including the vehicle and spacecraft. On board the mothership, Maureen decided to take Will and the commander to a desert planet to search for robots, as she also wanted to understand why the robots were connected to Will. Meanwhile, Penny, on her way to class, saw an unconscious officer being carried out and hurried over to inquire. The staff mentioned that a so-called doctor had reported the officer suddenly collapsing. June was then taken to a private office. Facing the large office, she was extremely happy, muttering about starting over. Soon after, Penny arrived there, asking what she had done to the officer, but she claimed she had done nothing unusual, just chatted and then he fainted, perhaps overwhelmed by her beauty. She then closed the door and sent Penny away. Penny, spying secretly, noticed June sneakily throwing a trash bag. Approaching the trash chute, Penny went to check the garbage processing room in the school, but lacked the access. Later in class, she grabbed a handful of sand, rubbed it on her and her boyfriend's clothes, then raised her hand to ask the teacher if they could go to the restroom to clean up. Penny then hurried out with her boyfriend, who complained about her involving him in sneaky deeds after not seeing each other for 7 months. Just then, a staff member came out, and they quickly hid, sharing an intimate moment which made the boyfriend relent. When they opened the garbage room, a pungent smell hit them, but they had to proceed with the investigation. The boyfriend hesitated to descend, but after Penny pleaded, he finally agreed. After relentless searching, they found the trash bag with clues inside, even including the word killed. Just then, the garbage room attendant returned and turned on the compactor. They tried to escape, but Penny's leg got stuck. The boyfriend climbed up the escalator, seemingly about to abandon her. Penny shouted for help in despair, but suddenly the machine stopped. Her boyfriend hadn't fled, he had gone to turn off the switch. Penny was saved. Back in the classroom, they pieced together the shredded paper which read, "Curiosity killed the cat." June suddenly entered the classroom. Penny quickly hid the pieces of paper. As class ended, June blocked them, warning Penny not to rummage through others' trash or it might end as the note said. The two turned and walked away, but June followed, claiming she had cleared her name and that no rumors Penny spread would be believed. Furious, Penny left again. Just then, a strange scene unfolded beneath their feet. Penny threw her bag up, and suddenly, a large hole appeared in the spaceship, slowly collapsing. Just 12 hours earlier, they had discovered a substance that corroded metal. Those boarding the mothership were not allowed to carry any metal and had to go through strict disinfection. As one person was walking, he suddenly fell. After helping him up and conducting a check, they found nothing. However, there was a pool of blood under his knee. He mentioned that he had steel pins in his knee from an accident 10 years ago, but it appeared they had been corroded away. The pool of blood had turned into a large hole right in front of Penny and the others. At that moment, the mothership's alarm went off, starting to clear the area of people. They ran back, but the gates came down, isolating them within. They were now in a perilous situation because the only way out was through the corroding passage they were in. Scientists on the ship were looking into how to stop the spread of the corrosion, while a team was organized to cut through the ship's hull to rescue them from the service ducts. They took shelter in a classroom. June used a measuring cup against the wall, claiming it could help hear the rescue team approaching, and indeed, they could hear something. However, the rescue team encountered problems. The path ahead was fully corroded. The captain also faced serious issues. If the corrosion reached the ship's oxygen generation system, everyone on board would lose their life support. They had to prepare for the worst-case scenario, blowing up the entire area, meaning those in the classroom would perish with it. When Don heard this news and realized Penny was inside, his expression tightened. It seemed he had grown fond of her. He quickly got in touch with Penny, asking what was in their room, and upon learning about a white box, he told her to empty it. He then found the captain and convinced her of a plan to save them by hiding in the box and then being ejected into space during the explosion. However, the captain was skeptical that the box designed for samples could hold people. Don assured him it could. Seeing that the captain wasn't convinced, Don admitted he had used these boxes to smuggle steaks 7 times before, emphasizing their ability to keep the steaks fresh. The captain asked if he was a smuggler. Don had to admit it. With only 21 minutes left, the captain decided to go along with his plan. Don sprinted, relaying the escape plan through his communicator. However, a new issue arose. The box could only fit 3 people. June began to manipulate, saying she'd stay behind as protecting the children was her duty. To this, the teacher objected, feeling his manhood undermined. So he insisted that it should be him staying behind. However, this fell into June's plan. Penny, unable to bear listening any longer, pulled her aside to ask why she was doing this. Penny's boyfriend stepped up, urging them to go while he stayed behind. Not wanting to lose her boyfriend to the explosion, Penny quickly intervened. Then, the boyfriend discovered a compartment in the box containing a thermal control panel. Don informed them that removing it meant they'd likely freeze to death in space within a minute. With no other choice, they decided to risk it. They removed the thermal control panel, secured a fire extinguisher with tape, and prepared everything. But the teacher, suffering from claustrophobia, hesitated. With little time left, Penny convinced June to prove her brainwashing skills. As expected, June successfully persuaded the teacher to enter the box using deep breathing techniques. Penny opened the fire extinguisher while the engineer informed Don before closing the hatch. As the ship detached from the mothership following an explosion, their box was propelled into space. The temperature inside quickly dropped, and they became increasingly cold. Finally, after a shaky moment, they were rescued. Penny, seeing Don, burst into tears as if he were family. The ship was now safe, but soon after, Don was arrested for his smuggling activities. Will and the other 2 had already arrived at the desert planet aboard their spacecraft in search of a robot unique to him. With no war vehicles allowed on this barren world, their surprising choice of transportation was 3 horses. As darkness approached, they mounted their Ferrari horses and set off, quickly setting up safety barriers to protect themselves through the night it seemed they would now have to endure on this perilous planet. During the night, a few glowing eyes appeared not far away. Will and his group hastily grabbed flashlights to investigate. As the eyes drew closer, they realized they were facing the same alien dinosaur Judy had encountered during the day. However, the fence became highly unstable, flickering on and off as if affected by electromagnetic interference. The intelligent dinosaur kept testing the barriers and, deterred by electric shocks, hesitated to attack. Just as the fence failed again, Will dashed out. The dinosaur was about to attack when a burst of red light appeared, scaring them away. As the light faded, it revealed the familiar alien robot. Overjoyed, Will ran up and embraced the robot, bombarding it with questions about how it had arrived and sharing his eagerness to catch up. The robot, standing silently as if leading them somewhere, guided them to a cave adorned with various drawings. Will, thrilled, interpreted each depiction, most of which recalled memories shared with his pet robot. Suddenly, the robot pointed to a drawing of their first meeting, causing Will to wonder if the robot had forgotten their bond, which he now felt was fading. Noticing scars on the robot's arm, Will recalled an incident on the spacecraft where his robot had battled the combat robot. This scar wasn't present on the robot before him, prompting a chilling realization that this was not the robot he knew. As he urged his mother to leave, the robot transformed, blocking the cave entrance and raising glowing claws in defense rather than attack, indicating no desire to harm Will. Will speculated aloud, asking the robot if it sought something from him, which the robot seemed to confirm. As tensions rose and an attack seemed imminent, the commander appeared and disabled the robot with an electromagnetic wave. Despite not finding his pet robot, Will climbed a hill, where he stumbled upon a scene previously envisioned during a connection with his robot. Just as he was about to share the good news with his mother, he fell into a hole, calling for help until a familiar figure rescued him. In another instance, the alien robot was startled by a horse, prompting Will to explain that it was a transport animal, similar to a war vehicle. As he taught the robot how to calm the horse, it became absorbed in thought. Meanwhile, another robot's corpse caught its attention, possibly reflecting on its own 7-month captivity by the deceased robot. A large herd of alien yaks forced them to consider an alternate route, which Will's mother and commander went to scout. Back at the camp, the robot tried to emulate Will in calming the horse and even took an apple from Will to feed it, humorously asking for another despite Will's insistence that it was enough. Upon finding a route around the yak herd, Will's mother noticed a scar on the commander's chest, who confessed that he had felt a connection with a scarecrow, a connection that wasn't entirely safe. As they discussed, Will noticed the robot melting the ropes meant to secure the horse, which he protested, explaining the necessity of a bridle to prevent the horse from wandering, though the robot seemed not to understand. Maureen returned just after her conversation with the commander. She cautiously reminded Will to stay safe before they hit the road again. However, they soon encountered several alien dinosaurs ahead. With robots nearby, the dinosaurs weren't targeting them, but seemed fixated on the yaks not far off. As the yaks moved, the ground trembled, and they headed straight towards Will and his group. The robot issued a danger alert, and as the yaks drew closer, Will's horse panicked and threw him off. A fallen rock pinned down the horse's reins, trapping it. The herd of yaks was about to pass by. Will and his mother took cover behind some rocks while the robot positioned itself in front of the horse, its lights flashing red. The yaks stormed past in a blur of dust and debris. Once the dust settled, miraculously, both the robot and the horse were unscathed, and the robot casually fed the horse an apple, perhaps its way of treating a friend. Overjoyed, Will ran up and hugged the robot. Witnessing this, the commander began to doubt himself. It seems that not only Will, but also the horse could befriend the robot. The ship soared overhead. They were soon to reach their destination and leave the desert planet. However, trouble arose when Will's horse collapsed, a gash on its hindquarters likely inflicted during the escape, seemingly poisoned. The robot knelt down and placed its hand on the wound, attempting to heal the horse in its own way, but to no avail. The horse's eyes slowly closed. The robot's display showed profound sadness. It moved a rock to mark the horse's grave and bowed its head in a moment of silence. They finally reached the designated location where the commander's plan was to box the robot and control it. However, having traveled together and seen the unique bond the robot formed with both Will and the horse, the commander had a change of heart. He halted the operation, deciding not to reduce Will's robot to a mere tool. He let the robot sit with them in the cabin as they boarded the mothership. People looked at Will and the robot differently as they walked through the corridors to the area housing the alien engine. At Will's command, the robot activated the engine and retracted its blue, tentacle-like appendages, then carried the engine to the ship's engine bay. Meanwhile, John was discussing water supply issues with the captain when the ship received an unidentified audio signal. The captain abruptly ended the conversation without revealing the content to John, hinted at trouble. John sought help from Dawn, who could bypass restrictions and access the signal. However, confined, Dawn was helpless. John then turned to June, who had the necessary clearances. She managed to retrieve the audio for John while suspiciously fiddling with the communicator. At the computer, John and June accessed the audio. It was from multiple approaching alien ships. The situation escalated quickly as they were about to leave, but 3 people were already waiting to arrest John, indicating that June had betrayed John. After his capture, June approached the ship's doctor under the guise of ensuring everyone's safety to probe the leadership's next steps, and her ploy was successful. This was part of John and June's plan to infiltrate the top tier of the ship. Soon, the ship would face a crisis, and June would be appointed as the official onboard psychological counselor to manage everyone's emotions. The good news was that once Will and his mother returned, they could journey to their chosen colony on Alpha Centauri with the robot's help. However, the bad news was the ship's lack of water resources, meaning only some humans could leave while the rest would be abandoned on the desert planet. As soon as Maureen returned to the spaceship, John called her for a brief meeting. They were determined not to abandon the humans on the desert planet, but time was running short. The moment the robot restored the engine to its place, they would be ready to depart. However, they faced a significant issue. Even if they picked up all the humans on the ground, the mothership wouldn't have enough oxygen. Moreover, the water extracted from the planet was contaminated. Using this water to produce oxygen would corrode the pipes, risking the integrity of the mothership from within, potentially dooming everyone on board. Angela mentioned she had found a way to purify the water, but it would take a year to collect the oxygen they needed. They didn't have that much time to wait. While Maureen and John were discussing by the window, they spotted a planet. After some checks, they devised a plan, but they knew the captain would never agree to it. So they decided to rebel and take control of the entire mothership. The group was now discussing the plan to initiate a mutiny on the mothership. They needed to consider several things. First, there wasn't much time. Once the alien robot successfully installed the engine, the mothership would depart and abandon all the people on the desert planet. Second, their goal was to take control of the bridge, where the mothership could be commanded. Moreover, they anticipated several obstacles. The mothership had 18 well-trained guards. For John, a former Navy SEAL, this would usually be easy, but he was currently shackled and confined to his room. Thus, the heavy responsibility fell solely on Maureen. At that moment, June commented that it wasn't as difficult as it seemed. One could control people without lifting a finger by exploiting their weaknesses. With this in mind, they began their operation. Penny first approached Don. While he had no solution for the shackles, she brought a welding torch and cut the wall controlling the shackles right out. Meanwhile, the robot had already positioned the engine. Don placed the cutout wall on a cart, hobbled back to the squad on one leg, and informed the maintenance team's leader about the plan to abandon the remaining humans on the planet. Maureen and two others reached the bridge. The captain's intent was clear: to drive the mothership to the colony planet and then send a team to retrieve the humans left on the desert planet. However, one of the engines malfunctioned, a result of Maureen's group's sabotage. The captain ordered them to be expelled, and a black guard immediately called for backup. As the guards approached, Maureen reminded the guard of the time he had saved his life back on the desert planet. Looking grateful, the guard promptly shut the door, blocking the other guards from entering. Maureen then called the doctor, asking him to return Will and the robot to the spaceship. Although the doctor initially tried to keep them back, the robot's red light mode convinced him to let Will and the robot go. The captain then questioned how they could allow so many people aboard without enough oxygen. Maureen explained that they planned to drive the mothership to a gaseous planet rich in ammonia, which could neutralize the corrosive substances in the water. With that, the mothership began its journey to the ammonia-rich planet. The mothership was cruising toward a planet while the alien robot strode along its corridors, followed by Will and Penny. Penny noticed a change in the robot's behavior. She mentioned that the robot used to walk behind him, almost like it was protecting him. But now they were following the robot. Will replied that maybe it's just everything they had been through lately, and he would get it back to normal. But before he could finish, the robot stopped abruptly, seemingly drawn to something in the room ahead, yet it didn't alert them to danger as it used to. Penny kept nagging in his ear until Will told her to be quiet, and they continued on their way. Meanwhile, John was trying to pick his shackles open with a screwdriver when the doctor found him and brought the eavesdropping Judy into the room. The doctor tried to persuade John to stop Maureen's actions. Of course, John wouldn't comply. The doctor then revealed Maureen's crimes. Initially, Will didn't qualify to board the mothership, and Maureen had no authority to change Will's status. To get his whole family on board, Maureen made a deal involving the mothership and spaceship security systems with a mysterious person who turned out to be the doctor. The doctor then laid out his plan. If they didn't persuade Maureen, he would use the access code given by Maureen to open the oxygen system's air valves. This would cause the gas to flood the room, increasing the pressure. If anyone introduced that contaminated water, the pipes would explode, evaporating the water and causing their plan to fail. They would have to head to the colony planet, and ultimately, Maureen and Will would be captured and sent back to Earth. Upon hearing this, John was about to charge at the doctor, but the doctor controlled the electric current to the shackles, forcing John to lie incapacitated on the floor. The doctor then locked the room and left. Under Maureen's command, the mothership charged toward the gaseous planet. Affected by the atmospheric pressure, a pillar on the spaceship began to break. The mothership had no automatic repair function, but Maureen wasn't panicked at all because she had already deployed the robot to fix the pillar. As it turned out, the robot's welding skills were top-notch, and it had a strong ability to operate in harsh environments. Following Maureen's orders, the air intake was opened to start collecting ammonia. However, by then, the doctor had already logged into the security system and shut down the command bridge. Fortunately, they still had a backup plan. John had convinced June to warn Maureen in advance. But on her way, she encountered a little girl, which triggered overwhelming memories. Unable to face her fears, she took a detour and missed the critical timing. By the time she reached the door, it was already too late to enter. On Maureen's side, they lost control of the air valves. As the doctor pressed the confirm button, the external air valves were opened by engineers, and ammonia gas flooded in through the main door. At this moment, Don's wall came in handy, delaying the descent of the valves. Most people managed to escape, but he and the captain were trapped inside. They tried to pry the valves open but couldn't budge them. Eventually, they sat on the floor, and as ammonia filled the air, they couldn't hold on much longer. Meanwhile, June at the bridge's doorway repeatedly called for Maureen to no avail. Hearing the alarm, she realized she had arrived too late. At that moment, the alien robot passed by the sealed gates, continuing its path without stopping, repeatedly warning someone of the danger. Will was clueless about who the robot referred to. On the bridge, Maureen and her team were at a loss. When she saw that Don and the captain were still trapped, she ran out, boarded a repair spacecraft, and set out to rescue them. Due to the atmospheric pressure, the flight was unstable, nearly resulting in a crash. Fortunately, with her expert piloting skills, she reached the external chamber and managed to close the external hatch using a robotic arm. By then, the two inside had already passed out. She succeeded. Amidst the spinning, the external hatch was successfully closed, and the internal hatch was opened. Don and the others were saved. At this moment, Maureen also breathed a sigh of relief. John's shackles were unlocked, and the cabin door was also opened. They knew their plan had failed. The doctor then arrived at the bridge and told the captain to set off for the colony planet. By this time, the captain had been persuaded. He activated the conversion system, and John also got in touch with his wife, who was on her way back. Learning that Maureen hadn't seen June, he was furious. On his way to meet Maureen, he encountered June and questioned her about why she hadn't informed Maureen in time. June dared not tell John the reason for her detour. John was utterly disappointed in her. This time, June really had a hard tale to tell. At this moment, the robot pried open a gate, which turned out to be the room where the Scarecrow was detained. Two guards were administering electric shocks to the Scarecrow. Seeing his fellow Scarecrow so weak, the robot's face instantly turned red. With a swift move, he knocked down a guard, and the other guard fled in fear. Then he ripped the sturdy prison door off its hinges and embraced the Scarecrow. However, the light on the Scarecrow's face indicated that he was very weak. The robot, holding the Scarecrow, was about to leave. Will asked where he was going. He said he still needed to help them get home, but the robot flatly refused him. Later, the robot arrived at the mothership's cockpit and turned to start the mothership, intending to save the Scarecrow. But the control panel was broken, and nothing happened when the robot operated it. Will asked what he was doing. The robot replied that he was helping his friend. Will said their current task was to lead humanity to a new home, but the robot refused. As the Scarecrow was taken away by the robot, the doctor issued a warrant for John's family. Outside the mothership, Maureen was still rushing back in the repair spacecraft. John also arrived at the cabin to wait for Maureen. At that moment, Maureen's spacecraft indicated that the fuel was about to run out. John decided to take another spacecraft to bring her back, but their communication was monitored by the doctor. He then sent a message to the colony planet, alleging Maureen was rebelling and attempting to take control of the mothership. Realizing her mistake, she and her husband tried to repair the mothership, but their spacecraft fell into space. They organized a rescue, but it was unsuccessful. The doctor locked the external hatch and called the bridge to accelerate the mothership forward. Officially, this was to clear the water quickly and expedite the rescue of survivors, but the main reason was to abandon Maureen and John. As the mothership accelerated, Maureen and John were flung out. To evade capture, Penny smashed the communicator. They all hid in the trash room. Will wanted to know how they were going to save the Scarecrow next. The robot pointed to its arm, displaying symbols that were the same as those photographed by Maureen on Mercury, but returning to Mercury was too far. Just then, the robot drew a horse on the wall. At that moment, Will remembered a similar place on the desert planet. Meanwhile, the commander broadcasted a warrant for Will and his group. Hearing the news, Judy hurried out to find Will. Meanwhile, June felt hurt by John's slander, but still came to the commander's room to help them. The little girl found Judy. Although her mother had forbidden her from playing with Will's family, she chose to help her friends. While they were talking, they were suddenly grabbed. It turned out to be Penny who had found them. They went to the trash room to discuss how to escape. At that moment, guards were approaching outside. Will and the others were discussing how to evade the pursuit and escape. Just then, the guards were almost upon them. The guard opened the door and looked inside, only to find trash. Led by the little girl, Will and others had already made it to the storage room. After some discussion, they had a plan in place. Meanwhile, John and another person, having been abandoned, were drifting further from the mothership. They decided to sneak back onto the mothership. As they were moving towards the mothership's orbit, the spacecraft shook violently, and suddenly, a giant eye appeared. It was a mythical giant fish. As it swished its GPS tail, 2 repair spacecraft were flung outwards. John tried to use a mechanical arm to grab his wife's spacecraft, but the arm couldn't withstand the pressure and broke off. They were getting closer to a high-temperature zone below, but at the last moment, John successfully grabbed Maureen's spacecraft with the mechanical arm. They were safe for the moment, but the alarm showed only 12% fuel left, and they were very far from the mothership. Will faced a major problem. Either to leave the mothership to save the Scarecrow, they needed a spacecraft. They needed to borrow one, but who would lend a spacecraft to a bunch of kids? Then, Penny thought of her little boyfriend. At lunchtime, she left a meeting address on her boyfriend's lunch. June also found the boy and tried to seduce him into revealing Penny's location. Of course, he wouldn't tell her. He then followed the address to find the stairs. Penny was hiding behind them. The boy also learned that June was helping the commander. Meanwhile, the Scarecrow's situation was dire, almost on the brink of death. The robot showed Will the horse's nameplate, seemingly suggesting burying the Scarecrow, but Will sincerely told the robot that they couldn't just watch the Scarecrow die. Penny quickly went back to inform everyone that June was with the commander. Knowing her well, they decided to do the unexpected. They went to the warehouse where the vehicles were stored and prepared a combat vehicle. June and the commander walked right into their trap. First, they saw the little girl on the surveillance. Then they saw a combat vehicle driving through the corridor with Penny and Judy on board. Meanwhile, the commander was frantically chasing them, but was scolded by the doctor for being foolish. They were on the mothership and in space. How could they possibly escape? As they spoke, the gate in front of Judy and Penny lowered. Judy remained calm, confidently saying they would speed to the curve's apex, then slow down and accelerate out. However, things didn't go as smoothly as spoken, and problems were somewhat expected. Eventually, they successfully came to a crashing halt, the airbags deployed, and they were captured by the arriving guards. But they were not worried because their plan had worked. Their rear compartment contained only a mechanical arm. On the other side, Will and the two headed to their family's spacecraft. Upon opening the door, they found the commander waiting to intercept them. He couldn't let Will take the robot, which was their hope for survival. He didn't want to harm the robot, but hoped to use its assistance to get everyone to the colony planet successfully. Suddenly, a burst of electric shock sounded. The robot fell, incapacitated by the doctor's stun baton. The robot, making no retaliation, pointed to the fallen Scarecrow on the ground, asking them to save the Scarecrow. The commander felt compassion, seeing the weakened state of the Scarecrow. The commander was then taken away by the doctor. The robot emerged from the ship and began to fight back. Seeing the robot defending its kind, the commander realized they shared the same goal. He and Will dragged the Scarecrow into the spacecraft, but the robot, weakened by the electric shocks, knelt down. Seeing this, Will yelled in distress, urging it to stand and fight back. In the end, the robot could only entrust Will with saving the Scarecrow. As Will shut the hatch, the robot collapsed weakly. They could only fulfill the robot's request, starting the spacecraft and leaving the mothership, while the robot was locked in a box. In the sky, John and another person saw their spacecraft. They couldn't worry about much now, as the air valves were about to close. Seizing the moment to return to the mothership, John floored the throttle. In the final moments, they successfully made it back, while the robot was bound by the doctor with a drill-wired electrode inserted into its head. The spaceship arrived on a desolate desert planet. Here, there were metallic platforms resembling lightning rods found on watery worlds. After relentless searching, they finally located the marker that the robot had told Will about. The spaceship landed smoothly. Next, they had to place the barely alive Scarecrow on the platform to resurrect him with a bolt of lightning. However, a storm was fast approaching and would strike in minutes, and the Scarecrow couldn't hold on much longer. Now they had to position it quickly. The commander decided to sacrifice himself to save the Scarecrow. He locked Will in the cockpit and then dragged the Scarecrow to the designated spot, the Scarecrow crawling forward cooperatively. As the lightning struck, the commander realized he couldn't return. With a flash of light, Will was also thrown out. When he got up and looked out the window, he saw countless red lights lighting up, clearly groups of alien robots. He quickly sent out a distress signal using the wireless communication device. On the mothership, John and his wife planned to rescue Will's robot. Dawn was cutting through the wall, and the robot was right above them. The monitor showed that Will's ship was returning, carrying all the humans from the desert planet, as their ships had been destroyed by the robots. The aliens were piloting a ship and following them. Upon hearing this news, the doctor and June headed to the cockpit, preparing to have Will's robot open a black hole for them to cross. He continuously adjusted the remote to increase the voltage, but the robot kept resisting. On John's side, they heard the sound of the alien engines starting up. It would take a while to burn through the wall, so John chose another way in, drawing on his Navy SEALs training. He simply walked up to the door, threw a few punches, and choked out the guard at the entrance, then took his access card. But upon entering, he was stunned by the number of guards inside. With no other choice, a fight ensued. Fortunately, his agility allowed him to take down the guards one by one. Inside, the doctor had turned the voltage to its maximum, and the robot was slowly weakening. Another guard ran in but was knocked out by Dawn using a fire extinguisher. Maureen rushed in and stunned the doctor with a stun baton, then successfully rescued the robot. By this time, Will's ship had also returned, bringing back the last humans from the desert planet. Will told the robot that he had completed his task and placed the Scarecrow in the designated spot, but the commander had sacrificed himself. They now urgently needed to escape because a large number of alien robots were about to arrive. Maureen asked the robot to take them to the colony planet, but the robot refused. Moreover, even if they could open a black hole to the colony planet, the alien robots might follow them there. John said they couldn't bring the alien robots to the colony planet. Maureen said they therefore had to deal with them on the mothership. John asked how to do it, and Maureen decided to have the robot board the mothership. A group of people was hurriedly setting something up. They even brought out an alien engine. It turned out an alien spaceship, glowing red, was approaching their mothership. As the alien ship's laser cannons activated, a large hole blew open at the top of the spaceship corridor. Immediately afterward, terrifying alien robots stormed in. In an instant, the arrival of the robots disrupted all the surveillance on the ship. Will and Penny had no idea of the robots' whereabouts, making it impossible to report back to their mother. Meanwhile, John and Judy were trying to lure the robots by carrying the alien engine and running frantically forward. On the other side, Maureen and his team were still setting up a magnetic device, preparing to attract the robots there and then control them. The robots were getting closer to John and Judy. John closed the gates to block them, but to his dismay, the supposedly solid gates were like tofu, easily destroyed by the robots. However, the destruction of the gates allowed Penny to pinpoint the robots' locations and inform Maureen. Knowing this, Maureen made the final preparations, then slowly had everyone retreat to their rooms. Dawn hid in a corner by the door. Just as John and the army of robots arrived, the room quickly filled with a dense crowd of robots. As the last robot entered, Dawn gave the command, and Maureen pressed the switch on his hand. Instantly, the robots were immobilized. Since the power wasn't fully charged, they couldn't eliminate them. They could only keep them under control. It would take a full day for the power to fully charge. Just as Maureen breathed a sigh of relief, she received more bad news. Hundreds of alien ships were heading their way, expected to arrive in an hour. Judy proposed to have all the children board a spaceship, then install the alien engine on it, open a black hole, and send all the children to the colony planet. Faced with the prospect of family separation, Maureen disagreed, but to ensure humanity's survival, they had no choice but to proceed. The robot placed the engine on the spaceship, while June secretly boarded the spaceship, planning to abandon everyone and leave with the robot for survival. However, the robot stopped her. The light on the robot's face seemed to say that they must stick together. Unable to proceed, June walked out. At this time, the children were making their final farewells to their loved ones, lining up to board the spaceship. June casually picked up a toy ball from the ground. John's family also made their final goodbyes, with Judy leading Will and Penny onto the spaceship. But just then, the robot walked past Maureen. Maureen and June followed it to the control area for the alien robots. Since the voltage was insufficient, the alien robots could still move slowly and were attempting to cut the wires. But just then, a robot switched on the exterior hatch. Maureen and June quickly retreated back inside the inner hatch. June asked if the robot would go over to help, but the light on its face seemed to suggest a separation was imminent, and then it turned and left. Finally, June made the most correct decision of her life. She put on a spacesuit and ventured alone into the robot-filled cabin. However, due to the magnetic forces, her movement in the spacesuit was also restricted. She accidentally scratched her helmet, creating a crack. Fortunately, she managed to move a wire out of the way, but there were still many wires being cut in the distance. Soon, the crack in June's helmet widened, and then Maureen lost contact with her. Stepping outside, he only saw a spacesuit drifting into space. As the alien robots sliced through the wires with their claws, they broke free from control and sensed the location of the alien engine, making their way towards the spaceship. At that moment, the pet robot was in the process of starting the alien engine. Sensing their approach, it was about to intervene, but Will stopped it, insisting that it continue with the engine startup while he handled the robots himself. Will stepped outside where a horde of menacing robots advanced towards him. Then, the lead robot emerged, recognizing Will. Will pleaded with it not to fight, but the robot, failing to comprehend, opened its claws to attack. Just then, the Scarecrow appeared, swooping in to rescue Will. Penny quickly pulled Will back to safety. In a display of gratitude, the Scarecrow held off all the alien robots, showcasing formidable combat skills. Even when facing a group, it held its own. With its help, Will and the others successfully launched their spaceship. However, when facing the lead robot, the Scarecrow was slightly outmatched, and soon found itself overpowered and knocked to the ground. As the lead robot prepared to unleash a beam to destroy the spaceship, the Scarecrow intervened, though it resulted in one engine being destroyed. This didn't hinder their flight, but merely prevented acceleration. They needed more time to open the black hole. To delay the menacing robots and prevent them from boarding the spaceship and harming the children, John and another decided to make the mothership self-destruct. However, the mothership lacked such a protocol. Instead, they opted to make the mothership collide with the robot's ship to annihilate the robots. As the mothership ships were evacuating in an orderly fashion, the robots rushed to their own ship, preparing to chase after the children's spaceship. Debris that had previously detached from the mothership was now hurtling towards it. By then, the children's spaceship had already left the mothership. Under the robots' guidance, the wormhole was successfully opened. Having done everything they could, John and his companion hurried towards the spaceship, but it was clearly too late. They could only kiss at the window, bidding their final farewell. However, the clever Dawn suddenly appeared and saved them. As the debris collided with the mothership, the alien spaceship also took off. Both ships sailed side by side, but due to the large size of the alien spaceship, it collided with the mothership and was destroyed. The ship carrying John and the others was a step too slow. The wormhole disappeared before their eyes. Under the robot's operation, the children's spaceship successfully passed through the black hole and arrived at the colony planet. After everything, the robots noticed a box nearby containing June's scarf and a toy ball. But just then, as they looked towards the colony planet, they discovered that the so-called colony planet was a dilapidated planet. Floating amidst the planetary debris was the Fortuna, missing for 20 years, and whose captain was her biological father. With this, the second season concluded.